Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio, and this is the Fiio FT3. And this is also the Fiio FT3. Now, by all outward appearances, they are exactly the same. However, while externally they may appear identical, internally, they are very different. So this is the latest iteration of the FT3. The original has a 350 ohm impedance and this one has a 32 ohm impedance. But it's not just the impedance that is different. They've also implemented a different driver. It has a higher sensitivity and it even sounds different. And they've also changed up the accessories a little bit. So let's talk about that first and go over what's included in the box. So first we have the headphones themselves. They've also included a nice cable. However, this is not the same Furukawa cable that you get with the 350 ohm version. It is only about half the length of the Furukawa cable. This one is about 5 feet long, but it does come with the same interchangeable terminations, including a 3.5 single-ended, a 4.4 balanced, a 4-pin XLR, and a 6.35 adapter. But the cable type and length is the only difference. Everything else is the same, including the pad options. It comes with both the artificial suede pads and also the extra pair of protein leather pads as well. And then finally, we have a very nice looking hard shell case, and inside the case is a little organizer / holder for the extra interchangeable cable termination. So all in all, it's still a very well-rounded, very nice package for the price range. As for the price, specifications, and design, the FT3 comes in at $319 and it has an open back design. Again, this is the 32 ohm version, and along with the impedance, the sensitivity has changed as well from 105 dBs and it's been increased up to 110 dBs. And like the original, it also uses a fairly large 60mm dynamic driver, but instead of the beryllium plated gasket and the DLC diaphragm, they've switched over to an aluminum coated driver. Now, as for the build and the design, it's basically identical to the 350 ohm version, with the exception of the impedance being printed on the inside of the base of the headband. The housings are made from aluminum, as is the rest of the main body or structure of the headphones. So they feel strong, they feel well built, and are also fairly lightweight. They're also quite comfortable. The housings have a 3-axis swiveling design. The ear pad openings aren't very large, so some might find them to be on the smaller side, which means depending on your ear size, it may fully surround your ears or it may rest on the edges of your ears. Now, as far as the headband, it is adjustable and it looks like they've maybe added some elastic or some kind of stretchy material under the headband pad itself, which makes it just a little more pliable, again, resulting in an overall fairly comfortable fit. And then going back to the cable itself is 1.5 meters or 5 feet long. The 350 ohm FT3's cable is 10 feet long. But as far as the overall cable quality, it's very nice at this price. It's made using high purity monocrystalline copper. And again, it has the 3.5 single-ended, 4.4 balanced, and XLR interchangeable terminations. And it also has the 6.35 adapter, so you can use them with most all of your devices. And then just kind of going back to the design, again, it is identical to the original. I do like it. However, it does strike me as having more of a gamer aesthetic to it. But again, I do like it. I think it's very cool. The build quality overall is actually extremely good at this price point. I just wish they would have maybe incorporated some other materials or colors into the design. Okay, let's move on to the sound. So just to kind of recap the changes, the impedance has gone from 350 ohms to 32 ohms. The sensitivity has increased from 105 dBs to 110 dBs, and they've also changed out the driver. Now, from what I've kind of gathered based on what I've read on Fiio's website is that the goal was to basically make the FT3 a little more versatile and usable with sources that have a lower power output, even just a phone or a PC. And I believe their exact terminology was that this variant is ideal for mobile use. But is it actually significantly easier to drive, and does it sound different? And the answer to both of those questions is yes. We'll talk about drivability first, and then we'll talk about the sound differences. Now, I tested both FT3s on lots of different sources with lots of different levels of not just power output, but voltage level output as well. My Topping L70, E70 Velvet Stack, the X-Duo XD05 Pro, about 6 different DAPs, including my M15S, my Hibi R6 Pro 2, and then I also tested them both on some of my lower output USB dongles like the Tantrum Space Lite, and then some that have a little more power output like the Hibi FC6 and the Moondrop Moon River 2. And I even plugged it into my computer and laptop's 3.5 headphone output as well. And the 32 ohm FT3 is unquestionably easier to drive. For example, on my XD05 Pro using the 350 ohm FT3, I was listening at about 55% volume level, and then with a 32 ohm FT3 at about 43% volume level. And then when using my Tantrum Space with the 32 ohm FT3, I was listening at about 65 to 70% volume level, and then with the 350 ohm FT3, I was pushing about 90% volume. So if you are looking for a headphone in this price range that doesn't require a lot of power and is drivable with a wider variety of devices, then the 32 ohm FT3 is unquestionably a good option in this budget range. That being said, I was able to reach good listening levels with most of the lower output USB dongles that I used with the 350 ohm FT3, but in many cases I did have to push the volume pretty close to max output, especially when plugging directly into PCs or laptops. So if you don't have any portable or desktop DAC amps with a little bit more power or level output, then the 32 ohm FT3 might be the better option for you out of the two. But then you also may need to take your sound or tuning preference into consideration because they don't sound the same. So what are those differences? Well, in a nutshell, the 32 ohm version has more bass and a smoother treble presentation. And like the 350 ohm version, the different pads will affect the overall sound presentation. The suede pads will give you just a little more warmth and more bass than the protein leather pads. And if you're wondering if the bass levels of the 32 ohm FT3 with the protein leather pads are similar to the 350 ohm FT3 with the suede pads, the answer is no. You are still going to have a little more bass presence overall from the 32 ohm FT3 with the protein leather pads than you will with the 350 ohm FT3 with the suede pads. So in general, the sound presentation of the 32 ohm version will be just a little more fun, a little more engaging, while the 350 ohm version has a more neutral overall presentation. Now, as for the bass, unfortunately, some of the same issues with the bass that were present with the 350 ohm version are still present with the 32 ohm version. And what I felt that was lacking with the 350 ohm version was bass dynamics. So while the bass dynamics are okay, I still think they fall slightly behind the Sivga Luan, but are maybe a little better than the Zeus Elite. And I do think the 350 ohm version does have a slightly more controlled bass presentation in general. So you get more bass with the 32 ohm version, but I think you get a slight improvement overall as far as the bass performance in the 350 ohm version of the FT3. And then as you move into the mid-range, I also think the mid-range presentation of the 350 ohm version is just a little cleaner, at least in the lower mids. The upper mid-range detail and clarity is probably about the same. Now, as far as its general naturalness, the 32 ohm FT3's mid-range does generally present instruments and vocals naturally. I also think vocal presence is good, and while vocals aren't necessarily front and center in the mix, I don't really feel like they're pushed too far back either. Now, as far as the treble, again, it does have a slightly smoother treble presentation, especially when compared again to the 350 ohm version. So for those who prefer their treble to be maybe a little more relaxed, then the 32 ohm version might work great for you. But the thing is, one of the areas where I felt the 350 ohm FT3 performed well was in treble detail. And I will tell you right now that, again, while I do think the treble detail of the 32 ohm version is pretty good, I think its more relaxed approach can maybe give a slight sense of diminished detail compared to the 350 ohm version. As for the technical performance of the 32 ohm FT3, I would say it's maybe about average, even though, again, I still think the original 350 ohm FT3 gives you better overall technical performance. I would say the sound stage is similar between the two versions. The 350 ohm version might sound a little more open, but it also has slightly better imaging as far as instrument density. And again, maybe some perceived increased detail levels because of the additional treble energy as well over the 32 ohm version. So here's the bottom line. Of the two versions, I prefer the 350 ohm FT3. Its tuning is more neutral, which I prefer, and it has just slightly better technical performance in my opinion overall. That being said, if you need something that's easier to drive and those minor tuning differences don't matter to you, or maybe that tuning even fits your preference, then the 32 ohm version might be a great option for you. But if you have a portable or desktop device that does have plenty of power and level output, and you prefer a more neutral presentation, then the 350 ohm FT3 might be a better fit for you. Now, aside from the sound, no matter which one you choose, they both have the same great craftsmanship and design, and they both give you plenty of high quality accessories. The only difference being that you can only get the Furukawa cable with the 350 ohm FT3. So I don't really think you can go wrong with either one of these. They're both great options. It really just comes down to your personal preference. Again, the 350 ohm version might give you slightly better performance, but again, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. So that concludes my review of the Fiio FT3 32 ohm version. If you're new to the Gazaudio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further with your support, we also now have a Patreon. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please like this video. Please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.